You might be thinking, what should my heart rate be when I'm doing cardiovascular exercise? So we need to look at a few things first. The first thing is we need to look at what our maximum heart rate is. And the equation I like to use for this is called the Tanaka equation. This is essentially where you take 208 and minus it by 0.7 times your age. So for myself, I'm 25. If we use the Tanaka equation for that, it's going to give me about 190.5 beats per minute as my maximum heart rate. I will say this is an estimate. To find your true max heart rate, you would need to get a graded exercise test done in a lab, or just have a heart rate monitor worked up to you and have somebody push you to the brink. That's going to give you that complete max heart rate. Once you have that though, and again, since it's just an estimate, this is what we're working off of, you will then be able to kind of apply this to your different heart rate zones. So also too, I want to talk about how we actually measure those heart rate zones. So how do we measure our heart rate in general? So we need to be at a specific cardio level for about 3 minutes. 3 minutes before we can actually take a steady state heart rate from our body. And then we need to palpate. It's called your carotid artery. So it's usually right about like here on me. Sometimes it's a little bit lower in some individuals. Basically, there's this artery that pumps blood to you, and this is usually where a lot of individuals take their heart rate from. And you can also do it on your brachial artery, so I'll kind of show you the best I can on here. That's going to be on your wrist. I should make a video on this too, but those are two very common areas to take your heart rate. So basically, once you get to that 3 minutes of cardiovascular activities at a steady state, you are then going to set a timer for 15 seconds, palpate your carotid artery or your brachial artery for 15 seconds, and then based off that number, you're going to get probably like 15 to 30, a number between 15 and 30. That's your 15-second beats per minute. So you're going to multiply that by 4 then to then find how many beats per minute you're doing. So if you take your heart rate on your carotid artery and you get 30 beats per minute in a 15-minute segment, you're going to multiply that by 4, 120 beats per minute. Boom. So now you're thinking, okay, but that's a percentage, that's a percentage of my max heart rate. So for me, 120 beats per minute is a percentage of 190.5 beats per minute. And basically, now we're going to kind of look at the different heart rate zones. For most individuals, we're trying to do zone 1 to zone 2 in cardio about 15 to 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week. That's a good starting point. So you're going to take your maximum heart rate, and then you are going to multiply it by that percentage, and that's going to give you roughly what your heart rate should be. So you're going to multiply it by 50% to 70%, and that's going to give you that heart rate range for your zone 1 to zone 2 cardio. And just know you're trying to roughly hit those numbers 2 to 3 times a week. On top of that, zone 4 to 5, this is going to be that higher intensity exercise. I usually try to do this at least in 10-minute intervals, which would basically mean be like maybe 30 seconds. I would go as hard as I can, rest for a minute or two, and then repeat that a few times. That zone 4 to 5 cardio, which is going to be 80% of your heart rate max to 100% of your heart rate max, only about 1 to 2 times a week. This takes a lot to recover from, and you're going to need to build up to that over time. So I would start on kind of the lower numbers, but basically know you're finding your max heart rate, and then once you find your max heart rate, you're multiplying it by the zone you're trying to hit, either zone 1 or zone 2 roughly, so 50 to 70% of your max heart rate, or about 80 to 100% of your max heart rate in the zone 4 to 5 cardio. And then you're actually measuring your heart rate during your exercise. So the 15 seconds, multiply that by 4, you'll see if you're in your heart rate zone. Go ahead and give this video a like if that introduced you to something that was helpful and provided you some value.